Welcome back to XRP Update, everybody. We have a massive XRP update to talk about today because the $30 XRP price target is once again making headlines across the crypto community. Now, before you click away and say, here we go again, another crazy XRP prediction, hear me out for a second. Because this isn't just some random number somebody pulled out of thin air on social media. There is actually a framework behind it. There is actual math behind it. And whether you agree with it or not, it's worth understanding why more analysts are starting to put that number on the board for the next major crypto cycle. Now, let me be very clear right from the start. Nobody knows exactly where XRP is going. Nobody can guarantee a $30 XRP. Nobody can tell you the exact date the market bottoms or the exact date the market tops. If somebody tells you they can, they're guessing. But what we can do is look at probabilities. We can look at history. We can look at Bitcoin cycles. We can look at XRP's behavior during previous bull runs. And then we can ask ourselves a simple question. Is $30 actually impossible, or is it just uncomfortable for people to imagine because XRP has been stuck trading at much lower levels for so long? Let's start with the number itself because context matters. A lot of people hear $30 XRP and immediately say it's impossible, but they never stop to do the math. XRP currently has a circulating supply of roughly 62 billion tokens. At $30 per coin, you're looking at a market capitalization approaching the $1 trillion range. Now, I know the second I mention market cap, somebody is going to jump into the comments and tell me market cap doesn't matter. Look, I understand the argument. I've talked about it before. But whether we like it or not, market cap is still one of the most widely used measurements in the entire crypto industry. So for the sake of discussion, let's use it. Now, is a trillion plus valuation a big number? Absolutely. But let's put it into perspective. Bitcoin has already reached valuations that many people once thought were impossible. Gold's market capitalization sits in the tens of trillions. Global cross-border payment markets move trillions of dollars every single year. International remittances process hundreds of billions annually. The money exists. The liquidity exists. The real question isn't whether a large valuation is possible. The question is whether XRP can generate enough demand to justify it. That's the debate investors should actually be having. And this is where history becomes important. Because if there's one thing XRP has shown over the years, it's that when the market enters a full-blown bull cycle, XRP can move very aggressively. Back in the 2017 bull run, XRP delivered returns that most investors only dream about. Then we got the 2021 cycle. And let's be honest, XRP wasn't exactly operating under ideal conditions. There was regulatory uncertainty everywhere. The SEC lawsuit was hanging over the project. Major exchanges removed XRP trading. Investor confidence took a hit. Yet despite all of that, XRP still produced impressive gains. That's the part a lot of people forget. Now fast forward to today. The landscape looks completely different than it did during the last cycle. Regulatory clarity has improved. Institutional interest in crypto continues to grow. More financial firms are entering the space. Exchange products tied to digital assets are attracting billions in capital. Whether you're bullish or bearish on XRP, you have to admit the environment heading into the next cycle is not the same environment XRP faced in 2021. That's one of the biggest reasons some analysts believe the next major move could be significantly larger than what most people expect. Now, here's something else that I think a lot of people overlook when they talk about XRP. Most investors spend all their time staring at the daily chart. They watch every little move. If XRP goes down 5%, they're worried. If it goes up 5%, they're excited. But the biggest gains in crypto history were never made by people who focused on every small move. They were made by people who understood the bigger picture and had the patience to sit through the noise. Think about Bitcoin for a second. There were countless moments throughout Bitcoin's history where people thought the story was over. Every major correction brought fear into the market. Every bear market convinced people that crypto was finished. Yet every cycle eventually produced new highs. Now, that doesn't mean XRP will automatically follow the exact same path. What it does mean is that markets tend to reward patience much more than emotion. And that's why the next couple of years are so important. For the first time in XRP's history, we're entering a potential cycle where Ripple has significantly more infrastructure, significantly more visibility, and significantly more institutional awareness than it had in previous bull runs. Back in 2017, most of the move was driven by retail excitement. In 2021, XRP was fighting regulatory uncertainty. Today, the conversation is completely different. We're talking about institutional adoption. We're talking about financial infrastructure. We're talking about products and services designed for large-scale use cases. Whether you're bullish or bearish, that's a major shift from where things stood just a few years ago. Now, does that automatically mean XRP goes to $30? No, of course not. Markets don't work that way. But what it does mean is that the foundation supporting the asset is stronger than it was during previous cycles. And that's exactly why so many analysts continue watching XRP closely despite all the volatility we've seen over the last few years. Another thing investors need to remember is that market sentiment can change incredibly fast. Right now, there are still plenty of people who are skeptical about XRP. That's normal. In fact, every major bull market starts with skepticism. People question the thesis. They question the timing. They question the targets. Then, if momentum starts building, sentiment begins to shift. We've seen that happen repeatedly across crypto markets. The key takeaway here is simple. Don't focus only on where XRP is today. Focus on where the ecosystem could be if adoption continues growing, if institutional demand continues increasing, and if the broader crypto market enters another major expansion phase. Those are the factors that could ultimately determine whether the most bullish XRP projections become reality or remain just projections. And honestly, that's why this story is worth following. Not because anybody has a crystal ball, not because anybody can guarantee a specific price target, but because the next cycle could answer questions that investors have been debating for years. Can XRP finally outperform expectations? Can institutional adoption become a meaningful driver of demand? Can Ripple's long-term strategy translate into stronger market performance? Those are the questions that matter. And over the coming months and years, we're going to get the answers. But here's where things get really interesting. The $30 target isn't just about XRP. It's also about Bitcoin. Because whether people like it or not, Bitcoin remains the engine that drives the entire crypto market. Most major altcoin rallies happen when Bitcoin enters a strong expansion phase. Historically, money flows into Bitcoin first, and then eventually rotates into alternative cryptocurrencies. That's happened repeatedly throughout crypto history. So when analysts discuss a $30 XRP, they're usually pairing that target with a very bullish Bitcoin scenario. For example, many cycle models suggest Bitcoin could potentially reach $200,000, $250,000, or even higher during the next major expansion phase. Now, before anybody loses their mind, remember that people once thought $10,000 Bitcoin was impossible. Then they thought $50,000 was impossible. Then they thought six figures were impossible. Markets have a funny way of making the impossible look obvious in hindsight. If Bitcoin reaches those higher targets and XRP regains some of its historical strength relative to Bitcoin, suddenly a $30 XRP doesn't sound quite as ridiculous as it did at first glance. And that's where the XRP to Bitcoin chart becomes incredibly important. Most retail investors only look at XRP's dollar price. Experienced analysts often look at XRP's performance against Bitcoin itself. Why? Because it gives you a better understanding of relative strength. Some analysts believe XRP could recover historical levels against Bitcoin that we've seen during previous market cycles. If that happens while Bitcoin itself is trading at dramatically higher prices, the math starts producing numbers that surprise a lot of people. Now, does that mean $30 is guaranteed? Absolutely not. Let's keep it real. There are risks everywhere. Bitcoin could underperform. The broader economy could weaken. Regulatory conditions could change. Institutional demand could arrive slower than expected. There are dozens of variables that could affect the outcome. That's why smart investors think in probabilities rather than certainties. The goal isn't to predict the future perfectly. The goal is to identify opportunities where the potential reward justifies the risk. And speaking of opportunity, one thing that has changed dramatically over the last few years is Ripple's infrastructure build-out. While most people were focused on short-term price action, Ripple continued building. Partnerships expanded, institutional products expanded, payment solutions expanded. The company continued positioning itself for a future where blockchain technology plays a larger role in global finance. Whether you love Ripple or hate Ripple, the reality is that the company has spent years developing infrastructure designed for institutional participation. Now, here's the question every investor needs to ask themselves. If the next major Bitcoin cycle arrives, if institutional participation continues increasing, if Ripple's infrastructure strategy gains traction, and if XRP recovers some of its historical strength relative to Bitcoin, what happens to the price? That's the bull case. That's the argument, not hype, not emotion, not blind optimism. Just a framework built around a series of developments that many analysts believe could converge over the next several years. At the same time, let's stay grounded. Nobody can call the exact bottom. Nobody knows whether XRP revisits lower levels before moving higher. The market doesn't care about our feelings. It doesn't care about our predictions. It moves according to supply, demand, liquidity, and investor behavior. That's why patience matters. That's why risk management matters. And that's why long-term investors often focus more on accumulation strategies than short-term price swings. At the end of the day, the $30 XRP discussion comes down to three things: Bitcoin reaching significantly higher valuations, XRP strengthening against Bitcoin the way it has during previous cycles, and Ripple's expanding infrastructure creating real institutional demand. If those three factors align, the bullish case becomes much easier to understand. If they don't align, then expectations will need to be adjusted. It's really that simple. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think XRP reaches $30 during the next major cycle? Do you think the target is realistic, or do you think it's still too aggressive? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this update, make sure you subscribe to XRP Update. Hit that like button and turn on notifications because we're going to continue following this story every step of the way. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next one.